How do you find the will to fight back against a world that wants to keep you sedated, average, and stuck in plates? Join us for the tools and strategies you need to create a life of abundance, discipline, and high achievement. This is the Tactical Empire with Jeff Smith.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Tactical Empire. Today, guys, I'm here with a buddy of mine, Adam Niec, who is a husband and father. He is the payment processing guru and the founder of Rate Tracker, which is about a 6-month-old company at this point. He has been in payment processing much longer than that, however, but we're going to kind of dive into his journey on his newest venture and see what kind of lessons he learned and what he's up to these days. So thanks for joining me, Adam. Welcome, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. It's a pleasure to be on here. And when I saw the opportunity to be on your podcast, I was like, hell yeah, let's do it. It makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Absolutely, man. You're welcome. You're very welcome. I appreciate your time. So yeah, I mean, you are doing multiple 7-8 figures in the payment processing business, maybe more than that. Tell me about what got you into that industry originally, and then kind of let's dive into the story of where you're at as far as your company currently. So how'd you get into payment processing?
So in college, I was working on a tech startup with one of my buddies, and we were kind of just like young kids, like dreamers. We kind of like were more excited about the idea rather than like actually doing the work. But we created a loyalty program that was the way that you could access it as a consumer was your driver's license or your credit card. So instead of having to get a piece of plastic for, the coffee shop, the sub shop, all these other businesses, you could literally just use your driver's license and the system would track you because that driver's license is unique. So instead of having to get those pieces of plastic, you use a card that's already in your wallet. So we literally were kind of running around for 3 years in college, and not super focused because we had school and other things to focus on. And, we really didn't get anywhere with it right out of the gate. So what I said was, I'm going to get a job at this payment processor selling, because they offered gift and reward programs. They offered payment processing, and I would be selling to small and medium-sized businesses. And so that was like, what was that? 2014, February is when I started selling for that company. It was Valentine's Day of 2014. So like a little bit over 8 years ago. I sold for that company for 2 years. And then we finally got that startup to a point where we could like actually launch it. And there's a lot of lessons there because we just waited, we were afraid and all this other crap. And then when we launched the business, we were like a month into it. And I realized that the product wasn't really a great one. The market said it sucked and we were kind of fighting an uphill battle. And it was just not a good scenario. So we squashed it. And then I went right back to selling payment processing for another 2 or 3 years, and then went off on my own. Started my own payments company, and it was great. So it's been quite the ride. I love small business. I love payments. I love helping, really, because if you think about it, small business is the backbone of America. Like that is you look at these bigger corporations that send money overseas and they go to China with whatever their suppliers. The small business keeps it in the community, right? That's what makes America America. And if we should protect that at all costs, I think. And what better way to do it than give them solid solutions to help them grow, stay in business, make a fat profit, feed their family, and all that fun stuff. So that's kind of where that's my motivation. I love small business owners. So.
Love it, man. I love it. And so you've been in this, you're a young guy, but like you've been in this line of work then ever since college.
Yeah, it's the only thing I've ever done for a career, except for that startup and a couple other things I had on the side. But payment processing has been my main thing for 8.5 years. And it's crazy because like I've done a lot of deals. I've worked with a lot of scenarios, and every day I learn something new. And the industry is full of that. It's dynamic. It's ever changing. And speaking of change, like I think maybe 10 to 15 years, crypto takes over, and there's no business for me anymore. And,
right.
I think that actually, it's funny because I think that would actually be a good thing. And so I hedge my risk by investing in crypto.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say that. What emerging kind of trends and what are you seeing in that space as far, not crypto specifically, but in the payment processing world? Because I know as a business owner, it drives me crazy because I just get eaten up with fees for my transaction fees. And so where do you see the emerging markets being? Where do you see this going? Because I mean, we're not going to pay 2.75%, 3.25% for rewards cards forever. I can't imagine. I have this is a commodity market, I presume, correct?
Oh yeah. Well, it depends on how you sell it. It's just like anything, right? Like at the end of the day, we do the same thing as all the other companies. We take money and deposit it. You take a piece of plastic and turn it into a liquid bank deposit, right? But like we focus on a few things that are we make it like non-commoditized or decommoditized. And the way you do that is through the technology that you offer, right? So we offer point of sale systems and all kinds of integrations and gateways and website stuff. That is one piece of it. The other question is, how are you being serviced? Do you have a sales rep that's paid every month on your success? And then pricing, right? What's your fees going to look like? Who is paying the fee, right? Like you just mentioned, what's the emerging market or what's the trend that we're seeing? The trend that we're seeing is about 70 to 75% of the new clients that we onboard at Rate Tracker for payment processing, they are opting into what's called cash discount. And cash discount is essentially the merchant who takes payments saying to their consumers, hey, we're no longer going to pay for your rewards, your points, your miles. If you want to pay with a credit card or a debit card, you have to pay a fee or receive a discount for paying in cash, right? And so through that program, it allows the merchant to eliminate their credit card processing fees completely. And the consumer, the one that's getting the points and the perks and the miles, they are paying for their own points and perks and miles. And if they don't like it, then they can just pay with cash. And like I said, more than half of our clients, almost 3/4 of our clients are opting in for that because like right now, cost of goods and services are going up, inflation, labor shortages, different industries are getting hit really hard still, restaurants being one of them. And we're seeing a trend of restaurants saying, hey, you know what? We don't really care if the customer doesn't like paying a credit card fee because we don't want to pay thousands of dollars a month so that people can get their points, perks, and miles. So we've been selling a lot of cash discount, but that's awesome. Other trends that we're seeing is like integrated solutions, point of sale systems, right? Like instead of just giving someone the ability to take a payment, we're giving them like a whole suite of technology that does different things in their business so that with their shortage in labor, with the stressful times that they've got with inventory and all the things that really what's going on in our world, they can still stay afloat, run their business and live out that American dream.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. Yeah. I heard a stat just yesterday, actually, that the price of restaurants eating out has gone up 84%.
What? Like,
yeah,
so the normal, wow.
Like sit down restaurants and fast food restaurants have gone up 7%. So even the most affordable style of eating out has increased 7% as well. So
dude, like that exactly right there shows you who's getting hit hard right now. Small business, right?
Yep.
Fast food and like big chains, they only had to raise their prices 7%.
Yeah.
Because they have that bulk power, and that's great. We should all aspire to create a big business.
Supply chain. Yeah.
Yeah, that, and also like regulation on pricing. Like if I just brought on 2 restaurants today as new clients, and the owner was telling me that, they say inflation is 8%, right? That was like the most recent report. But he's like, dude, that's the average. Like the price of cheese has nearly tripled. The price of chicken wings, and like depending on what you sell, some places just are not selling chicken wings because they don't want to sell it for such a disgusting price. And like 84%, man, that's insane. Oh,
yeah.
And so that's what happens is like COVID was obviously a big shock to the world, and it like slowed a lot of things down. And now we're seeing like a ripple effect, and it starts with small business because they're not buying 10 million cheeseburger patties. They're buying 100 or 10,000 or whatever that might be. And, you know, their suppliers are seeing increases in prices, and that just gets passed on to them, which then gets passed on to the people that are eating there, paying 84% more. And when you look at that on a macro scale and you think like, okay, if the average American is going to have to pay 84% more, only the affluent are going to go out to eat, right? Especially with rising costs of other goods and services. I just spent $106 yesterday to fill up my truck. I think it was $4.29 a gallon. And like, I can afford that. That's great. But to the people that are on a fixed salary, you know, $40,000, $50,000 a year, dude, that's a lot of money. And like, what's going to happen? Well, they're going to cut back on things like going out to eat because it's not needed to survive. And then that's going to kill a lot of restaurants. So we should do whatever we can to protect them. That's the way I see it, you know?
Yeah, the ripple effects are crazy. And when you talk about 8%, it's a bunch of bullshit too, because like you look at any of these charts that say the different rising costs, and like nothing's under like 16%, nothing on the list. So I don't know how you settle at 8.4 or 8.3 or whatever they're actually saying. I mean, shit, I admittedly had all the kids that I wanted to. And now my family is 6 people, and it's $70-$80 for us to go out for tacos, dude. Like,
wow. Yeah.
It's just a different ball game. I mean, if we want to go out and sit down somewhere, it's $200 any day of the week. And so, and I admit that I asked for all that, and I'm fortunate to be able to do it. So I'm not complaining at all, but like, not everybody's in that position. And you think about all the lack of steady jobs in the workforce because of shuttered restaurants and businesses. I mean, they've had one of the roughest goes of it. I mean, I owned a gym that I just sold a couple weeks ago, but I owned a gym through COVID, and we got shut down for 2 weeks or whatever. It wasn't very substantial in Texas, but it was still incredibly disruptive to our entire marketplace because of the way it changed behavior patterns. And obviously, whether you were open or closed, the fear in the consumer for a period of time was so substantial that it really affected and impacted a lot of things. I mean, it's been an interesting couple years with regards to small business. But I think there's a lot of people out there that, I mean, are very flexible. The entrepreneur by nature is mobile and agile and innovative. And I think there's a ton of opportunity coming down the pipe, tons, because the entire world has changed, and it's not going back, and just new emerging things are going to come around. And so those entrepreneurs that are still hungry and still doing it, the people that I feel the worst for are like multi-generation restaurateurs that like, that's what their family knew and they were amazing at it. And like, I talked to some of those guys here locally that may own 5 or 6 family restaurants, and that's what they've been doing for years. And like, if they have the benefit of being in the game so long that all their shit's paid for, they don't have any debt, things like that, the young studs can't compete with. Like, if you're coming into the marketplace and you're leveraged for all of your ovens, all of your manufacturing equipment, all that's not manufacturing equipment, but like cooktops, all the shit that you have, and you're leveraged on a loan for that, you're just in a tough spot. I mean, just driving around Houston, you can see it. like Kirsten and I went to a certain area for date night yesterday, and it's a nice area by Rice University. And like there's restaurants everywhere still, but they're all different restaurants than they were 2 years ago.
Yeah, like probably more carry out, less kitchen or less in-house seating, you know, maybe like a lot of Texas is different than Ohio. That's where I'm in, right?
Right.
We had curfews, we had shutdowns. I think Texas was like one of the first to like open back up, and alongside Florida. You know something, man? I don't know anyone that wasn't affected by COVID. Everybody was, whether it's family and losing somebody, or you know, anything. It could have been anything, economical, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And it's so interesting because I've had the pleasure of I bet you in my career, I've brought on like 200 or so restaurants, and we can sit here and talk about how they got pounded, and most of them did, man. I mean, if you're a white tablecloth restaurant, especially, like, let's think of what happened when COVID hit on a macro level. People did carry out, right? But like, if I'm a white tablecloth restaurant and I serve $60, $70, $80 dishes, half my game is the presentation and the in-house experience, right? The piano player, the harp player. You can't
85, 90%, not 50.
Yeah, more, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
I have a friend go ahead.
It's experiential.
Yeah,
for those guys.
The presentation, the view, the wine and the bread and all that. It's like an experience. It's not like, hey, I'm going to order pizza, we'll get it delivered and feed the family, right? It's like we're going out for an experience, right? So in Cleveland, the people that would go to his restaurant and spend $200 for a couple, that is the upper middle class and upper class that is typically older. And during the time, they were afraid of COVID, right? So what they do, they just stopped going there. That dude, he's my good friend. He actually lost that business completely. I mean, his rent was $15,000 a month. His overhead costs were about 200, and he had some months where he was only doing 100 to 150,000 in sales. So, you know, in the normal time, you know, he was making $2 to $3 million a year, right? And he ended up just losing everything because he didn't adapt, and his business was way too cost heavy. So now though, check it out. Throughout this process, like 2 summers ago when he was really struggling, I gave him 10 grand on a handshake deal, cash, so that he could make payroll and all this stuff. And he ended up not paying me back in time. It was a big issue. And then he paid me back. I loaned him another 6 grand, and he only paid me back like half of it. And then it took like about a year for that to come back, because he literally lost everything in the States. He had to fly down to Brazil, sell a couple of his assets off, and then he was able to take that money and reopen a restaurant. That restaurant is our client. They use us for point of sale and for cash discount processing. And he's killing it now. Like, he realized, okay, I shouldn't have a $15,000 rent payment. I'm going to dummy this down. I'm going to have an outside patio, simplify stuff. And he's only doing like a third of the sales that he was before, like in normal times, like 100 to 150 grand a month. But he's making like way more money, and he has that cushion built up, you know? He bought the building, so he pays rent to himself. Like, he did a lot of things that he learned from that scenario and like what can happen, right? Now, he's a person that lost what he had at the time, was able to rebuild from scratch. In fact, his new LLC is like Phoenix something LLC, you know, like how the Phoenix is like burns down and then rises back from the ashes. I thought that was cool. And so you take a guy like him that adapted, took it really hard, adapted, and he's still in business, versus like, I know a couple of restaurant owners that they got creamed. They lost everything. They couldn't adapt. Their mindset was totally messed, and they ended up losing everything, and they're not back in the game. They're doing something else, and that's fine, right? I think COVID showed a lot of people that they're probably better off working for somebody else, and instead of running their own business, right? Because that's a lot. And it ultimately just shows, like, no matter how successful you are right now, like, you always have to be able to adapt. You always have to be able to overcome challenges, and you have to think like both short-term and long-term, right? And I mean, I learned a lot from COVID. You know, I'm 31. I've never been through like a tough economical time, you know? But they're predicting
Yep.
this economical recession that's coming now. And so I'm like, well, what can I do to prepare for that, you know? And I'm still working through and thinking through like the best actions to take. And, you know, I think it's going to be just fine. Like I'm learning a lot, you know, as we go. What are you seeing in the real estate side of things? I know you're big in real estate.
Well, yeah, I mean, we experienced quite a lot of volatility. I think where your story highlights is the adaptability of an entrepreneur. And what I have seen more than anything, because I coach a bunch of different industries and I consult for different business owners in different industries. And I think spot on, the example you gave is an example of almost everybody to a man learned how to get leaner than they were, regarding their workforce, regarding their expenses, regarding everything. Like what do we need, as far like trimming the fat? I mean, we talked about that in a different manner, but like this is what I've seen more than anything is that like a lot of times in good times we run fat, and we've got expenses we don't need. We've got unnecessary stuff. And I mean, we've got unnecessary staff. We've got middle management that's just eating payroll costs out the ass, but their production is really 60% of what they're getting paid. We've got assets that are sitting there not being utilized. And so in the real estate space, I mean, what we saw was a lot of regulation. Can you evict? Can you not evict? Like, are the judges honoring evictions or not? How quickly can you get people out of your properties? Are people going to continue to pay their bills? Like, what is the narrative? And so, I mean, we were very communicative with our people that regardless of what they hear on the news, regardless of what was going on, they will get evicted if they stop paying their rent. And like, I mean, we dealt with a few people that had certain things going on that were one-offs or situations that we were empathetic to. Really, it's just like the main thing is being communicative with it in both directions. Like, I wanted to get ahead of everything and be like, listen, guys, I don't care what the news is telling you. I don't care what your president is spouting. Like, if you don't pay your rent, you will not live here. And this is not how it works. And so I kind of, we got ahead of that as a management team just to reinforce what was going on, because there was all kinds of fucking shit going on the news and narratives. And like, depending on where you lived, I'm sure your area was terrible, but like my sister lives in Illinois and she's got a shitload of rental property. She didn't get a penny for 2 years from anybody.
Oh.
And like the people just squatted in their residence and there was no evictions. There was nothing. And so, I mean, it depends on where you lived and where you were at regionally. I mean, I know a bunch of people who just got out of the game entirely because they're like, I'm not going to deal with this.
Yeah.
Like, and so now you have to kind of be proactive and think about where we're going. So you have to watch the economics of things and monetary policy and mortgage markets and like, where are we going with this affordable housing situation that we're running up against? Because you can't build a house for under $200,000 now. So 25 years ago, 30 years ago, a $200,000 house, especially in the Midwest where I'm from originally, was like a very nice house. Like you can get plenty of square footage to raise any size of family in for 200 grand that you wanted, and have a decent upper middle class home, I would say. And that's just not the case anymore. Like the cost of materials, cost of goods. A buddy of mine who's an engineer said that there's a stat out there that now, based on government regulations, which are federal, to get the engineering paperwork and everything regarding building a new build, you're in it for $40,000 to $50,000 just to get the government paperwork and licensing to build something.
Wow.
And they actually had a proposal to change that bill within the last 6 months. And if it had passed, it was going to bump it to $100,000. So to build any sort of 1,600 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, you would have had $100,000 outlay just to get all of the licensing that you needed to get green lighted so the general contractor could break ground. Wow. So
sounds like a lot of people are going to be deterred from wanting to get into that. You know?
Well, yeah, for sure that, but then as a thinker, like, where does that mean we're going? Right. And like, why would they be doing that? Because who is that helping? I mean, are we really trying to make these properties hurricane safe or natural disaster safe, or like what in the world would justify $100,000 worth of regulations to get to the groundbreaking part of building a house? Would a person rather have a house or a house that maybe could blow over in 300-mile-an-hour winds? Probably have a house.
Right.
So like, you just have to kind of think critically about all of it. Like, and if you leave that like political shit behind, okay, what's the practical stuff? Like, how does Billy and Johnny and Sue and Sarah, these two couples, afford houses if they're 20 years old and they're coming into a new job and they're making $60,000 each as a husband and wife, right? And so they've got $120,000 household income, which is a lot. I mean, it's a decent amount of money. How would they afford that? And the affordability index is one way to check what's going on. And you can kind of check, it's a national index. You can Google it. You can see your exact like zip code. You can see where you live. And what the affordability index has done over the last year, 2 years, 10 years. And what we're doing is we're seeing a trend of people being priced out of the ability to buy homes. Like, what is because it's got your median income versus your median household cost. And then what's rising fastest, and they're not proportional, obviously.
No, of course not.
So,
wow.
I say all that to say, like, I'm not trying to take over the podcast. You're supposed to be the one being interviewed, man.
No, you're good.
But the question you got to get ahead of and think about is like, what technology is going to emerge in the next few years to offset what's going on? Because you're seeing 3D printing. You're seeing 3D printed houses. There's one going up in my neighborhood. It's actually the first one I've ever seen around here. So I've been going over taking videos of it and shit because I think it's a fascinating process.
How long does that take? Like a couple months? Like to 3D print something from scratch, like a house?
Well, what they do is they print forms. So they do a CAD drawing of it, obviously, and then they pour the forms or print the forms, and the forms come out like styrofoam, and then they're just delivered on trucks in stacks, and they're like chicken wired styrofoam printing. And then they just put up the forms and stick it all together and then spray gunite on it. From what I can tell, I've never seen anything like it. So they were doing them in Austin a couple of years ago, which is when I first saw this stuff come out, but they were doing it to solve like a homeless crisis. They were trying to use it for that. And they were building these little tiny, like 400 square foot houses for homeless people. So they would take like a 5-acre tract and they would build like 30 of these in a little commune. and they would give the people like 400 square foot houses, and they were building those in like less than a week. So, I mean, you could do probably, I would say, a full size house. I don't know, 6-8 weeks.
Wow.
I mean, you still got to wire them, you still got to plumb them. They still have all of that. There's just no framing, and the materials don't. They're not obtrusive to get, right? Because we're getting all our lumber now from China. Like most of our lumber comes from China at this point, and so like you have supply chain issues and things like that that go on that we're experiencing in every single thing that we're trying to buy and consume. So
that's by design, right? Or is it by happenstance? I mean, who knows? Like that's like what you're talking about with the rising costs and, you know, median income not increasing. I think, dude, what that represents to me is like the powers that be, whatever you want to say, like they want to have more control over the mass populations. And like we all, it's like you mentioned, like taking your kids out and your family, like that's like $200 a pop. You know what they say, man, being a dad makes you a better person. And when you're a better person, typically you make more money. You got to be able to pay for that, you know? And yeah, I know you guys do great and all that, but like, think about it. Like if you weren't and you're an average person that doesn't think like you do, right? Dude, those people probably, I mean, I would imagine a lot of those folks are thinking like, oh my God, I'm losing all my power, my control. And I think with the right mindset, we can adapt and we can be more empowered, right? Be a victor, not a victim, and use the scenario as a way to win, right? Like how many people, you know, you mentioned that use your sister-in-law that has those properties in Chicago. I mean, that was probably really tough to have to make those payments and or whatever, how that looks, not get the rent, but she still owns the assets now. And they've probably went up 40% in value, right?
Yep.
I was talking with one of our dry cleaning clients the other day. The reason why their business has doubled is because their competitors quit and they stopped doing, because dry cleaning got nailed by COVID. Think about it. If you don't have to go to the office, why do you go to the dry cleaner anymore, right? Randomly, every so often you might, but they lost a lot of business and they figured out how to make it through. Businesses opened their doors, had more people coming back in the doors, and that leads to more people needing dry cleaning. Well, if your competitors quit and you're still doing the same thing, that opens the door to get more business, right? And that's what happened for them. And like, that's the general theme, man. It's the people that were able to stick it out through COVID, and at least in the first phase. I still think that we have a lot of shit ahead of us. Like it's a long-term endurance game, you know, and like a lot of times you can be successful in business by just outlasting your competition. You know, like the payment processing world, we got nailed in March and April and May of 2020. Dude, that was terrible. Like we were operating and processing about 20 to 30% of what we were normally processing up to that point. Yep. That's how we make money. It's based on the dollars transacted, the number of transactions, and I just look at it like on a macro scale. Now, like we made it through, we're good. And now the entire industry is booming because there's a lot of businesses that don't even want to take cash anymore. There's merchants that have sold their business and now the new owners are millennials, and the millennials are encouraging people to just pay with plastic. People don't want to pay with cash because it's dirty, right? And there's also more card not present payments. So online, over the phone, whatever. And there's never been a better time. So we stuck it out through the shit period and we were able to make it through to this point now where it's booming, you know? Tons of people are flooding into the industry, and it's interesting because a lot of them are coming from the mortgage industry, right? The mortgage personality as far as like hunting business and getting referral partners, bothering realtors, all that stuff so that you can get more referrals. That's the same concept as our game. You got to hunt, you got to knock on doors, you got to generate leads, referral partners. And like, it's cool how you see people gravitating to it. And here's my prediction. My prediction is that we got another 10 to 15 years of good, you know, the industry's gonna be great. And then it'll tank, you know, from crypto. Probably not gonna happen all at once. It probably happen over the course of a few years. But
yep.
I mean, it's like how the mortgage business worked pre-08, right? Like it was like 06 and 07, like people, you could fog a mirror and make $1 million a year in the mortgage industry, right? Kind of just like payments now, and then it crashed. I think it's going to kind of be similar and like mirror it a little bit, you know?
Well, you guys are going to see a ton of influx from mortgages because we're going to see some bankruptcies from mortgage companies, in my opinion. Like, because they're getting squeezed already. I mean, you figure how much staffing and payroll and things like that did they need when we had 1.9% interest rates?
Right.
I just refinanced a property commercially that was 6.9%, 6.9, 7.
That's what you were
paying? For a 30-year note. That's what I am paying. I just did it for commercial. And so the difference in volume that they're going to transact, think about that. It's going to be the markets are getting squeezed in the mortgage space right now. And it's already happening. So they're going to try to reverse it, I think, and start dropping rates again, but we will see. Yeah. But I think you're going to see more and more people coming from the mortgage space is my point. Good sales guys and things like that. So you should be looking for the A players right now.
Yeah.
Tell them to jump ship early.
Yeah.
Before it's sinking.
It's funny because a lot of guys in the mortgage space, they can't, I mean, it's not like they can't fathom it, but they're like, wait a minute, so I can close a deal and get paid again and again and again, because it's our industry model is residual income. And like, there is no residual in real estate except for rent and things like that. But like when you close a mortgage or whatever that looks like, you get paid up front from my understanding. And like, there isn't a residual, like it's a totally different.
Keep stacking them.
Yeah, exactly. And residual income is a beautiful thing. I'll say that, as you probably know. It's
There's no question.
Yeah, it's really cool.
The thing that about talking about what you were talking about is that like the strongest survived and the longevity of a business owner is the key to success. Now that's true, but what happened was, I mean, you figure that it's a bad situation that only 1 in 5 small businesses made it through the last 5 years or the last 2-3 years, right? And how does that change the dynamic of the producers and the middle class? The middle class is who I would consider small business owners. And if we lost 60% of that, then there's a problem, right? Also, the housing prices that we talked about, like if the entry level house throughout the United States is $350,000, but the entry level job is $50,000 a year, like how do you think they're going to put people in houses? Right. There's a couple different ways, but it would benefit the government if they were getting subsidized by the government, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So, and that would be right. That's more control, right?
100%. Yeah. Because I mean, I don't know if you've ever had an SBA loan. I haven't, but I know enough people that have taken them out to understand all the red tape that goes along with those government loans. I mean, there's a lot of rules and regulations and stringent policies that go along with them about how you can run your business, like how they're signed on the loans and all of that stuff. So you think the same thing goes for FHA and government-backed loans, not as much. They're not as stringent as they are with business stuff. But I mean, the free market doing its thing, you will see 40-year and 50-year mortgages, I believe, because we are a payment society, right? Like, because we're just like, we'll take the car. I mean, look at the fucking auto industry. You're too young to understand that, but shit, when I got my license, dude, you could buy a car for $500. Not brand new, but you could buy a drivable vehicle that you could drive all over the country for $1,500, $500. I mean, it wasn't a great car, but they run. You can't buy anything now, like anything.
For less than 10 grand, it's like worth it, you know?
I mean, new cars now are $100,000 for regular cars. And so, but again, we're just signing up on payment plans. They're like, oh, how long do you have to finance that? Oh, 8 years. Okay. We'll take 96 months for our $80,000 vehicle. And so I believe that'll be one of the waves that they'll try to do that'll be one of the fixes that they will try to implement to take the pressure off of people. So we'll have these 50-year mortgages that the payment will be palatable for. So you'll buy a $300,000 house on a 50-year mortgage and the payment will be $600 a month for your entire life.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is, if you can lock people in for that much longer, and like a lot of people don't think about it, hey, my payment's only $600-700 a month. I mean, that adds up, man. That's a lot of money that can be put towards other things. And I think that like a lot of us, we're in a consumer society. We want this now. And, okay, yeah, we can have it now and pay for it over time. I feel like that's the wrong way to look at it. And somebody like you that's built up a successful business, couple businesses, and you have assets that make you money, you have to cringe at some of these decisions that a lot of people make financially. You're like, dude, you're just literally setting yourself up to be totally taken advantage of and really not have your own free life. And they control you, like money's a great thing because it represents freedom and you can do a lot with it and all that stuff. And like, it's funny because if you can manage $10, you can manage $10 million, right? I mean, that might be a bad example, but
yes.
If you can't, then you can't on any level because your mindset is messed up. You're thinking like in the now, right? But like, I don't know about you, but like, I want to build like multi-generational wealth. I want my family to be taken care of for 6 or 7 generations or maybe even more, hundreds of years. Like, I want them to remember me like, oh, that dude like really helped the payment industry. And then back then they used credit cards. Do you know what that is? No. Because credit cards will be gone by then, and right. You think about like long-term, what does this look like in 3 to 4 generations? And like, yes, money can be made doing a lot of easy things. It's very easy to make money, but like our goal and job is to multiply it. And there's a rule that I think it was, I think Stewman had it. It's one of the 21 rules of money is when you make a decision, think generations down the line or something like that. And it's like, yeah, that's a great thought. Why not plan for super far ahead? Because like, honestly, I don't need the flashy stuff. I do okay financially and I'm still building like 3 years into being an entrepreneur. I don't even wear a watch. I don't care about that. I wear this fake or rubber wedding ring and, like, I don't need flash. What I want is assets. I want my family protected and, diversified, durable, and like all the other shit doesn't matter to me, I don't need that.
You keep that up and you keep delaying gratification and you'll have everything you want. And it's longer than you want it to be. And it's way faster than people will tell you it is. Like it's literally 3 to 7 years, 3 to 7 years based on your income. Like based on how much cash you can generate, you can be financially free in 3 to 7 years. That's all it takes. But nobody can buckle down and stay on track for that period of time.
Yeah. And it's because it's so easy. And we live in this world now of distractions and immediate or what's the word? Instant gratification. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what we live in, but like, let's look at that as opportunity. Because if we go the other way, then we're not going to be under control like the masses are. We are the ones that provide housing. We provide living for other people. We can add value to the world, shape the world as what entrepreneurs do. And, we're free. That's the big thing, The biggest thing is though, that you have to understand is that what's going on right now is eliminating the opportunity for the people behind you. And as young people, like I'm not worth $500 million. I'm not even close to where I want to be, not even close. And like
but I want the opportunity to continue to ascend levels.
Yeah.
And the thing that pisses me off about it, and the reason I'm posting political shit all the time and stuff like that is because, and the reason I rail against the government is because they're taking away the opportunity that I just figured out a couple years ago. And if I didn't have that opportunity, I could have never ascended to where I've gotten to. And like I said, I'm barely getting started. And so I feel like they're taking away my opportunity to go to the levels that I want to go to. But more importantly, I feel like they're taking away the opportunity of the person that's just getting started. Like go ahead.
I was going to say, dude, you could look at it like that, or you could look at it as like, all right, they made the playing field higher and harder, so I need to be better, right? And
sure.
I mean, if it's harder to get a seat at the table's probably going to be better. If it's more expensive or if it takes more hard work, great. Because there's a lot of people that, they're just getting started or 3 years in or 10 years, whatever. I mean, that level, like that be like what you're talking about should be hard to attain. And, $500 million is a lot of money, right? Like,
well, yes.
Maybe I misheard what you said, but
that table is going to be hard to attain. But I'm talking about going from starting a business with $500.
Oh yeah.
And doing the work to endure the first 3 years to where they're now making $50,000 a month and they're taking home 10,000 of that for their family.
Yeah.
Like 10, 20 years ago, you used to be able to do that. You could start a fucking business with the tools in your toolbox and your truck. And your truck didn't have to be $100,000 and your tools weren't fucking financed for 50 grand.
Sure, yeah.
Like that's what I'm talking about.
Gotcha.
The starting point, or to pull yourself out of your job at Taco Bell or whatever the fuck it is. Like these guys that's the American dream.
Yeah.
It's coming from, I worked my ass off all summer, like doing X, Y, and Z, detasseling. You're from the Midwest. You know what that is?
Yeah.
Do you?
Detasseling?
Yeah. Have you ever heard of that?
No. What is that?
Oh man. God, I'm aging myself. How old are you? 28, 29?
31.
You just turned, okay. When I grew up, when you were like 9, 10, 11 years old in Illinois, you had this summer job that you could be bused to called detasseling. And it's where you take the top off of a corn stalk and it fertilizes them again or something, or changes how they produce the corn. And literally, if you were a detasseler, you could go out and sit at like this bus stop area where they drop you off. You take your bag lunch. It paid like $9 an hour, $11 an hour at the time when we were like 11 years old. And
that's good.
And there was no other job that was like more than $2 an hour. And it only was like a 6-week period in the summer. It was it was serious labor, but it was really interesting work. I only say that, I don't even know where I was going with that, but like it's because you could save all your money. That's my point. You save all your money from your summer job, which then you parlay into the start of your thing, right?
And now you look at the cost of living now, like relative to wages. I mean, it's very disproportionate. Like, it's funny when you hear like old timers or older people say like, oh man, back in the day, I used to work in the summer and then I could pay for college. Well, fuck you, because I can make $5,000-$6,000 as a working somewhere. I used to caddy for golf courses. I can make $300-$400 a day, and like that doesn't pay for the tuition. My school that I went to was like 55 grand a year. I went to like a D3 liberal arts college, and thank God I played football and they gave me like a academic scholarship, like it was cheaper than high school. I went to a private high school, and all that stuff subsidized by the government, and that's a whole separate conversation, but it's like totally different now. And like, so it's not a bad thing. It's just, it is what it is. And the playing field is different. We just have to ascend it, like you said.
But that's a great point. That's a great point. I think that's going to change soon, though. I mean, like the cost of higher education they've they've gone so crazy that they've priced themselves out of their value, I think. And so I think more and more people are realizing that, because I graduated high school in '98, and even when I came out of high school and went into college, I think you could go to like Eastern Illinois University, which was just like a regular fucking college. You could go there for like $3,000 a year.
Yeah. Like, and like in today's world, what's that? Like 10 grand, something like that?
Shit, probably 30. I don't know. Like, that sounds real low to me, 10.
But now though, what I'm saying is it's proportional to the money that you can make back then is way more expensive.
Yeah, 100%. No, I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. And there's a lot of issues there. That's why I was excited to have you on, because I know you and I have a lot of interesting conversations about perspective, and the decade in between us and the experience difference is quite interesting. Just because you and I have a lot of good conversations, and I'm proud of how far you've come and what you're accomplished, and just only being 31, you've set your family up in a great position. So
thank you,
man. I really appreciate you coming on. If people want to hook up with you and hear more about Rate Tracker, or ask you questions on payment processing or anything, how do they get a hold of you?
So you can email me. It's adam@ratetracker.io. Or you can just hit me up on Facebook DM. I'm always on Facebook. Adam Niec, N as in Nancy, IEC as in Charlie. There's no E at the end. Okay. And that's how you get a hold of me.
Right.
Happy to help anybody. Like I do that all the time. Like where I talk to somebody, it doesn't even make sense for us to do their payments, or there's a reason why they can't use us. And I just love this industry. I love business owners so much that I'll help, and I don't charge for my time, even though I probably should. A lot of people have told me I should, but I believe in paying it forward and helping people. So.
Absolutely, brother. You espouse a servant's heart for sure.
Yes,
so I appreciate your time, Adam. Thanks.
Thank you.
Guys, hit this guy up if you have any questions about payment processing, or your business needs to compare some rates. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the show. Make sure you subscribe, leave a review, and share with a friend. We'll see you on the next episode of the Tactical Empire.